Welcome into the On Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper joining me live from East Lansing, Michigan, where a frustrating loss for Illinois, 80-78. And Illinois missed free throws. They went 5 for 24 from the three-point line, 17 of 2017 from the free throw line, out of sorts offensively, gave up a lot of offensive rebounds in the second half. But as much as it is the bane of my existence to talk about officiating and the impact on game, how can we not? The story of this game is Kasparas Jakucionis playing only 9 minutes as he fouls out with 3 fouls that I think were highly questionable. Late whistle on the first, it looked like a foul. Touch foul on his second. Aikens stepped on KJ's foot, tripped for a third foul. KJ got pushed to the ground, called for tripping on the offending MSU player who pushed him down. And then the fifth one was at least legit. But Derek, what was the mood there? What did Underwood have to say? And how do you think that impacted the game, the officiating today?
It impacted it in a major way, obviously. We're talking about a potential first-team All-Big Ten type of guy who's put up those numbers, and Brad's maybe one of the best points guards in the country, which no one is really arguing when you look at the production and just the poise for an 18-year-old. And you saw it there in the second half when he came back in. Illinois got caught into a rut offensively, settling for too many threes. KJ goes to the rim and one immediately, dimes up Tommy for one. So it had a huge impact on this one. Illinois did other things that ended up playing into them blowing a lead that they did, a double-digit lead in the first half, letting MSU tie it up at halftime. And then, like you said, missed threes, missed free throws. But the vibe was of major frustration. Brad gave off a loud, audible sigh as he walked into the post-game presser. We all knew where he probably was going to go, although he usually tends to say, hey, I don't want to get fined and everything like that. I'll abstain from doing that. But he called the fourth one gross. He said it was ridiculous that he was on the ground and got pushed and got called for that one. So essentially just kind of threw his hands up and said this is one of those that we couldn't control, and that when he was on the court, he was dominating. He was in control of the game. He's the best player on the court. And I think you certainly can't argue with that. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like the first one, the ref deep in the backcourt, 35 feet from the basket, calls the foul. It's late. Like you said, also the bump that was ticky-tack on the second one. And the trip, which looked like I thought it was a clear flop by Aikens, but maybe I think MSU was trying. I'm with you. I hate talking about refs too much, but MSU was clearly their guards going downhill, which to their credit, putting pressure on the rim, but constantly trying to bait the ref into making a call. And they are high in pom and free throw rate drawn and everything at MSU as a team. But that's what they try to do is they fly in there, they try to sell contact, and KJ probably needs to be smarter on that last one. And I did feel like Fiddler clearly baited him, which sometimes refs won't give a player who is clearly trying to, instead of making a basketball play and just going up and hitting that 15-foot jump shot, instead of kind of like pausing and maybe even leaning backwards into KJ, they don't give him that call. And sometimes also when you get a star player who has 4 fouls, they're going to be a little hesitant to give him that 5th. Illinois didn't get the benefit of that. They also didn't get the benefit of a technical foul called during was it a timeout? Was it a tie-up? They obviously gave Izzo the timeout. So they were Brad has said, and I think part of what I'm going to write is, Brad says when they go on the road, it's us against the world. And it really felt like that today for Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, I know fans joke it's 8 versus 5, but especially when you go into Breslin with Tom Izzo, the longest-serving guy, the Hall of Famer. He's got a way of working, and he's doing his job as a coach, right? Like that is his job is to work the officials. And I thought they did. The third one you were talking about, he just literally stepped on KJ's foot and tripped himself. So I just couldn't understand that one. So it certainly impacted the game. The game is different with KJ in. We saw it. Illinois looked left for dead. KJ comes back in after having 4 fouls with about 8 minutes left, and he gets an and one. He takes advantage of the undersized Michigan State guards, which Kylan Boswell and Dre Gibbs-Walhorn just can't quite do. And then he dishes one to Ivisic for an easy layup. So it would have been a different game, and I would have loved to have seen that game. Does Illinois win? I give them a good chance based on how they fought. Kudos to them. We'll talk about the bench really stepping up today. I thought Ivisic played really, really well, but I just would have liked to have seen that game. And that's what annoys me is when the officials insert themselves like this and makes it's a tough job. It is a really tough job, but you got to be better than this. Like you got to be better than what they were today.
I won't say who said it, but there was a conversation in the hallway of, okay, how many Big Ten games are taking place today? 3. So there's 9 Big Ten refs. If these 3 are part of the 9 best in the league, we got a problem. And Jeffrey Anderson does a ton of games, and he's a high-profile official known as High Knees, mostly because that is a viral move from him. Yeah, he makes a lot of questionable calls. And even one, I know that's being mentioned in the chat, where I think it was clearly out of bounds on Illinois in the second half from my vantage point, but they called it off of Michigan State. And then Izzo kind of like gestures to Anderson, what's up with that? And he said, no, I had it going the other way. And then immediately he just changed his mind, goes to the other official and points it.
And he was the furthest official from that call, I think, like from that actual play.
Yeah, so it's bad. And we know it's been bad at a number of different points. You see
I missed Bill Borowski. Remember when he got all the crap? Like,
I did get a lot of crap. Yeah, it's one of those things where I wonder, this is a game where the physical nature of these teams, you always are wondering, what crew are we going to get? How tightly is it going to be whistled? And I can't give you a good answer. Like, who's the ref that you want to see? Like, we'll feel good about today if this guy walks in. I know that I think Brad has said, I think DJ is a guy that he has a good working relationship with, good amount of respect for, DJ Carstensen. But just in general, it is most officials are known for their name based on you don't think they're very good at their job, and it is a tough job. But just felt like Tom got his way, and that's part of the built-in why it's so tough to go on the road, especially in prime spots like this. We kind of bake in. It was like that with the Kohl Center through the years, and Indiana's been like that in the past. And I don't want to make it all about that, but Illinois did get the wrong side of some home cooking today for sure. It felt like.
I want to talk about, Derek, some of the performances from today, but I do want to bring up a couple moments in this game. I didn't understand not playing KJ. I know how the game turned out. I know what the result ended up being, but I don't understand why they didn't get KJ back in the game in the final 5 minutes when I thought that turned the game. Michigan State goes on a 17-8 run. I think there was a 7-0 run in there at one point, and Boswell was just struggling, and they kept the ball in his hands. I just felt like help him out and get KJ in for a couple possessions at the least. And it really didn't make a lot of sense to me that they got him in at 9 minutes and then pulled him out at 8 and then didn't get him back in. Listen, maybe he gets his third foul and it goes for naught. I just thought in that moment, it's like that was a big turn of the game. Like Illinois was, after that Will Riley, just need somebody to calm you down, get you to halftime with a lead. And I know it might not have worked, but I just would have wanted my best player on the court. Brad does this though, like 2 fouls. He doesn't play his guys usually, and didn't end up mattering anyway because KJ got those 3 fouls quickly.
It's a tough decision, and as you see it play out, the route that Brad chose, KJ still barely played the game. He could have gone the other way and been a little more aggressive with it, like you said. And if he picks up 3, number 3 in that first half, then you're caught in a similar situation where early in the second half, you imagine he'd get 4 at some point, obviously, as it played out, and you're kind of caught in the same deal. So I get the fear of it. I also feel like maybe he believed he was playing with a little bit of house money. You run into a Will Riley heater, and you're like, hey, I don't think he's thinking in his mind that we're going to go from a 10-point lead to like allowing MSU to even this thing up after all the time that Illinois was ahead. But yeah, I think that he was viewing that as a chance to sit KJ and to get away with it and to buy that time, which it was working for a while. I'm with you. The momentum was turning, number one. Number two, Kylan was awful in the first half in particular. I know he was not very good on the game as a whole. But in the first half, some of the decision-making wasn't guarding nearly as well. I mean, he was getting beaten off the bounce, which we rarely see. But the turnovers, the pull-up threes, he continues to shoot. And it was one of those where you combine the whistle you were getting and then Kylan to have that day. Those are 2 hard things to overcome.
Yeah. I also want to bring up the technical foul late in the game with 3 minutes left. Those 2 points ended up being pretty big. I get it. Illinois deserved to have a technical foul in that game with how frustrating it was, but it did make an impact. And then not calling a timeout on that final possession. This is what Brad does. And I don't blame him. He doesn't want the defense to be able to get set. Michigan State's defense was great, but obviously it was kind of an out of sorts possession. Callan drives, he dishes to Ivisic. It was a kind of a rocket pass. Ivisic wasn't ready for it, and it's a turnover, and obviously that changes the game. So just what did you make of those two, kind of big moments late in the game? Is Illinois battled and had a chance to win this one late somehow?
I don't like the stash the timeout on that offensive possession, especially without KJ. But when KJ's out there, I trust him to make a play, to be able to be difficult enough for a defense to stop, to facilitate and set the table and make the right decision. I'm not saying it was a bad play. Ultimately, a Kylan drive down the lane, he could have went up if he wanted to. It would have been a contested layup. We know he's struggled with those. Certainly, if Tommy was a little more ready.
Well, Tommy might have been there for the offensive rebound too, right?
That's true.
They did well. So
that's true. If Tommy was either a little bit more ready or the pass had a little bit more finesse to it, maybe then you're talking about great thing. It works out. And I get the whole. I mean, then you're opening up the Pandora's box of Illinois and inbounds plays, sideline out of bounds, late in the game. So you got that rolling as well. I just felt like the possession had very little structure, very little direction until that just kind of broke down and KJ or Kylan went to try to make a play. It nearly worked, but for me, especially that KJ out there, I want something a little bit more drawn up and go over certain things with your guys. Like here's option 1, option 2, and Kylan has earlier in the game. Again, I don't hate where he got on the floor, but he's kind of struggled with seeing it, with making the right decision. So I felt like it would have made sense to draw something up there, but that's just what he does. He doesn't want defenses to get set, to scheme against that, and he's rolled with that.
Yeah, Kylan, that stretch at the end of the first half was pretty brutal. 5 straight missed shots. I think it was in 3 minutes plus a turnover. It just felt like he was trying to be KJ, and I don't think he needs to do that when he's got some other good players, especially Tomislav Ivisic. Like they're running offense through him, and I thought he was really good. He left a couple short on some of those short jumpers yet again, didn't make a lot of threes, but I just thought he made really good decisions. That's kind of what I would have liked to come out of the timeout with was Ivisic kind of making the decision there, but that stretch where he just kind of lobbed up some threes that were ISOs, like that can't be him. Like especially with the way he's struggling to shoot the ball. Derek, he made some big plays late in that game to get him back. I'll give him that. He rebounded his ass off, but 5 turnovers, all those kind of empty possessions that led to some runouts for Michigan State too. Like you just needed a better game from him, just like you did against USC. So that's where Kasparas is. He helps him so much. He helps Tommy so much. Obviously, he helps everybody so much. But it was a struggle for Kylan. Trey White was non-existent tonight. I don't know what happened there. And Ben Hummerkaus didn't have a great shooting night. I thought he battled defensively and on the glass, but your veterans need to play better if you had a chance.
Yeah, you said it there. Two of your most experienced guys in Kylan and Trey, and just really didn't show up that well. Trey was kind of more non-existent, where Kylan was just noticeably struggling in an on-ball position, and he struggled against USC as well. Not to say that he can't handle some of that in terms of primary facilitating, but he was loose with it. Seems sped up at times, and then it seems like when he either is fighting it or just trying to do something, I don't really understand. Some of it is just the pull-up 3, the stop and pop 3. It seems to kind of be the last resort ultimately for him, and that's a tough shot, and he's not shooting the 3 well at all, mostly on the season. So he's been a big part of your team. Obviously, he's a big reason why you're up to this point in the season with his defense, with the Robin he can play to KJ's Batman, and I think that those guys, it shows how much KJ perfectly takes certain things off of Kylan's plate to open some things up for him, and you just needed better from a veteran to be more sound with the ball. And at times he went to the rim and he actually finished, and he did dump off a few to your bigs for scores as well, but the negatives kind of outweighed the positives for him.
For sure. All right, let's get to some of the positives of this game. Will Riley breakout finally happened. Derek, he was averaging 6.9 points, shooting 29% over the previous 11 games. He just goes off 16 points in 7 minutes in this first half after KJ went out. Just went scorched earth, 16 of 18 points, gave Illinois that 10-point lead at one point. Not as great of a second half, but you saw some activity on the glass. He dished off a few assists and finished around the rim, right? So wasn't a perfect game for Will Riley, but 19 points, that's the most he's had against a high major. What did you see from him, and what does this mean for him moving forward?
Aggression, and a guy that didn't shy away from contact, a guy that went to the rim with confidence and as much strength as he has in his body as of right now. Certainly needs to continue to get physically progressed as time goes forward in his career and whatnot. But I think we've talked about it recently. I think that his activity has picked up over the last few games. I feel like it's a guy that is more active on the glass and just moving around and not just settling for a bunch of jumpers. I think that going to the rim is something that definitely helped him. Certainly, he made a three within that. Like the cutting, I thought Illinois' perimeter cutting was pretty good in this game. I think that seemed to be an added wrinkle or something they just were able to use. I saw more of it today than I can remember, with Kylan cutting down the lane, Will cutting from the perimeter down. Some of that was just using Tommy as a passer, which I think we'll talk a little bit about, but that was huge as well. From the high post feeds down to those guys, to Merez, and some high-low stuff too. So that was encouraging. But yeah, for Will, who we know can be a microwave, I haven't written off. Has it been underwhelming from a standpoint of where he was early in the season here recently? Yeah, absolutely. But he's too talented not to have had a breakout. I didn't necessarily think – I didn't predict it would come at Breslin against the best defense in the Big Ten to date, and with KJ out, but couldn't have come at a better time. And you just hope that he can build off that, which he's very capable of, and would not be the first freshman who figured something out in mid-January and then maybe rode that into the meat of the Big Ten season.
Tomislav Visic, 1 of 6 from 3, so didn't shoot all that well, but had 5 assists. And as you mentioned, Derek, there were some to Merez, some 2 big lineups where Merez got to the free throw line because of some of Tommy's passes, and we'll talk about Merez here in a minute. But there has been more running through Tommy here recently. What do you make of that, and what does that allow them to do?
I love it. No, he's a guy that sees the floor well, and he presents that spacing because he's out on the perimeter as a shooter. And if you give him too much space, he can pop that as a shot. And I think it gives, when Merez is out there, certainly you're not every team is equipped to battle Merez as kind of the 4-man, which he's 6'10" and yoked, and you don't have a lot of guys that maybe can fight that. And then also it creates just open lanes for guys to cut off of and that whole kind of thing. So I liked that look for him to be able to do that. And I think it's something that is just another mode for Illinois to create actions, create advantages, and he seems very comfortable in it. So Tommy is, as we talked about a lot, of supreme value to this team, but that might be something I feel like has picked up some traction here more and more, and there wasn't couldn't have enough of it today. It was something that worked really well.
40 bench points was the most for this team against a high major opponent this year. And obviously KJ being in foul trouble had a big impact on that. But, Merez Johnson, 11.6 rebounds, just continues to be what he is and do it at a high level. And then Dre Gibbs-Allhorn continues to give some big buckets, 7 points off the bench. Not the perfect game for him, but he just continues to provide some energy and show a lot of confidence attacking the hoop, especially Derek. So the bench has been really encouraging here recently. When you combine now DGL and Merez have been doing this for a nice stretch of Big Ten games. You had Will to that. And Jake Davis just kind of gave some decent minutes, made a 3 when nobody else was making 3s. Besides, I think Illinois made 2 of their last 18. One was Jake Davis, one was Ivisic. So, the bench came up huge today.
Big time. Yeah, and that's one of the real bright spots that you're going to take away from this game. It just feels like Illinois has a growing and established bench bomb here. And I know it's not kind of like the NBA where you're playing in first and second unit waves. It gets blended in there where Dre can play with KJ, and it's not just those guys only on the court with one more, but just to know that depth of talent goes on down. And I just love that you get kind of consistency in terms of makeup with those guys. They all play really hard. You get some real grittiness out of Merez and Dre and even Jake as well. And Jake just has a constant motor. He just always seems to be moving around and certainly gives you the 3-point shooting. Merez's physicality inside. I mean, we've said it a million times, and I think it's worth saying one more, is that, Merez, similar to like a Ty Rodgers or some other guys through Brad's recruiting history, looks like what Tom had for a lot of years in terms of just that athletic, physical, big-time competitor, big man down low. I mean, maybe a supersized Brendan Dawson or something like that. I don't know ultimately, but and then Dre, man, you had the stat recently was 11.5 points over his last 6 and keeps adding to a nice little sample size here. I just think he's played great basketball. Like he got a foul, second chance opportunity because of the way he attacked the offensive glass so hard. He's just playing with great energy, and then offensively, he's so much more composed than he was last year. Even though being an aggressor, but a guy that I trust to go to the basket and not throw up some wild shot or travel or get too many steps ahead of himself. He's playing really well.
Yeah, Merez, the last 8 games, 8 points, 7.5 rebounds, DGL about 10+ points the last 7 games. So they're definitely getting a boost from those guys here recently. All right, Derek, Big Ten title is out of reach now. You're 3 losses back of Michigan State. You're 2 losses back of Michigan. We still got 12 Big Ten games, so a lot can happen, but Illinois has to go on one ridiculous run here.
They really do, yeah. I'm going to assign myself some homework. I mentioned it in the game thread. Has Illinois ever come back from a 2.5 game deficit in the Big Ten standing, 3 games back in the loss column, or I could even look at that, and then went on to win the Big Ten? So I'm going to try to effort that a little bit to get an answer there. I don't think it's over yet because I don't fully still trust this Michigan State team. And I think that their schedule gets tougher in February. Part of that is the return game to Champaign, which you can make up. You can kind of do the double whammy there, get yourself a win, give them a loss. And, they still play Michigan in their regular season finale. I don't have their schedule pulled up right directly in front of me, but, Michigan taking an L at Minnesota was a huge one. They could lose again coming up this week at Mackey, which, of course, that would then make stir up the conversation of, is Purdue now in prime position, yes, once again to, hey, are they back in three-peat range? So I don't think it's dead. Like you said, they're going to have to really go on a run here. I think that their next handful of games, I mean, they're going to be favored until that, what? Is it the Duke game? Ken Pom leading up to this one had it like, this is the last time Illinois would be a dog until Duke. So
they got Illinois as a favorite in 8 straight games before going to Wisconsin. They're a 1-point dog there, and then they're a dog at Duke and at Michigan, just slight dogs against Michigan.
Yeah, and I see the chat saying that Northwestern's currently beating Michigan in Ann Arbor, so that's another one that can make things interesting.
Yeah, like here's the big stint, and I'll try to pull it up here for our YouTube listeners, is Michigan's close to the season is ridiculously hard. Starting February 15th, at Illinois, home against Purdue, at Michigan, at Maryland, home against Wisconsin, at Iowa, home against Michigan. That's a lot of top 60 KenPom teams. That's a lot of top 25 teams, right?
Yep.
So that's going to be the stretch that determines it. And they got some road games here coming up. Rutgers kind of bouncing back with Dylan Harper back full healthy. We know USC is playing well. UCLA on the road, Oregon at home. So the hard part for Illinois is, Derek, you just have those 2 losses you regret. Like this isn't a loss that, like, at the end of the season, it's not a bad loss, right? It's the USC loss. It's fading late in that game against Northwestern. Not that it's easy to win at Northwestern, but coming off of those 2 losses already, to have this one stings when you're trying to chase a Big Ten title. And I still think those matter. Ultimately, we're going to talk about whether this team makes a Sweet 16 or a Final Four or wins a national championship, but I still like getting banners, and I still like beating Big Ten teams.
Yeah, and a Big Ten title usually coincides with a top 2 or 3 at worst seed in the NCAA tournament. Like, if you win the Big Ten, you're probably looking at like a 2 seed, most likely, or better potentially. But I think that would be something Illinois would probably be in line with if they were able to do that. It does seem like Brad, and I don't know that I asked him going into this game, have you had the conversation with your guys about the Big Ten title picture right now and what this game could mean and all that kind of thing? And he said, no, haven't even thought about it. Haven't discussed that with them, but he is talking big picture stuff with them in terms of floor and ceiling. I think end game, which is, where they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. Can they get to San Antonio? That's the big focus ultimately for this team. And not to say, they were clearly really disappointed in this one, if not flat out angry about this one. And we'll, I'm sure, love to see Michigan State again when that time comes. But it is, in big picture, I was encouraged overall. I think you can be encouraged by Illinois today to only lose by 2 without KJ on the road and all the circumstances you went through. And I just feel like they battled adversity pretty well today for the most part. Now, they had some shortcomings where they could have still won the game if they make, Trey White steps up there and makes all 3 of the free throws on a foul instead of 1 of 3, and a couple other situations where they didn't make. I think Will Riley missed both of those late in the game. So, you did contribute to it, but also you had to fight like hell to stay in, and they did that, to their credit.
All right, this will be tested too, Derek. You got Maryland coming to town on Thursday, so you get some time to rest up and prepare for this one. Maryland, obviously a talented team, not a very good team at this moment right now, but haven't lost back-to-back since the end of the 2022-23 season. It's a big game. Big game, bounce back, take care of home court. Then you get Northwestern at home, get some revenge on that one. Head to Nebraska, which is never an easy place to play. It's a really good environment, and I think you're better than Ohio State. I mean, that Indiana-Ohio State game was just ugly. But you got to win the next 4. Like, if you want to get back into this one, you got to win the next 4.
Yeah, and Illinois is clearly better than all 4 of those teams on their schedule here coming up.
You could win the next 6. You got Rutgers and Minnesota on the road after that.
No doubt. And you respect the fact, Rutgers, as they showed at Nebraska when Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper both play at a really high level, they can be a really tough team. Illinois knows the RAC is difficult in general, but still, that's one. Just because you are expected to win, and I think it's shown with the USC game and even Northwestern that you can't just automatically have a letdown or just assume you'll take care of business, and you're gonna have to earn everything. But I think the depth of talent is certainly helping you to be consistent. The defense, which we know has bared out over the large sample size. So, and you get to go home for 2. You get an off day tomorrow, which I know they'll be looking forward to, and then I'm sure they'll be hungry. If I'm Maryland, I'm ready for a hungry dog coming out on Thursday. I would imagine that Brad has his guys ready to go, and they should hold serve at home. You need to if you really want to be in this Big Ten picture as far as the title goes.
You're right, though, Derek. I think they know. You did the numbers. 2-11 in the last 13 AM tip-offs, including some NCAA tournament games. Coming out with energy was not an issue today. Like that was not an issue today. So I didn't worry about that.
Right, no doubt. And some of those losses, I looked at a few of them, like the Tennessee game last year. Illinois battled like hell for the first 30 minutes of that game in Knoxville. That was one of those losses as well. And so a few of them are still like legitimate, like full-on fights that Illinois had that just come up short. But there are some duds mixed in there. Penn State at home a few years ago, and USC for sure, and the Loyola game for sure. Houston kind of also just had they're better than you, athletic trump card on you. So you can get it all. It's not a good stat. And I would try to avoid it if you're talking NCAA tournament. If you see an 11 a.m. game, I would raise some alarm bells and worry. But today was not an effort thing or a team that wasn't ready to play. They knew I was, talking around as the guys were warming up, and the feeling was like, we know this is going to be a war, and we know that the zone will be ready and this place will be rocking, which it was, and it was a war. Unfortunately, it was a war that the refs took KJ out of for the most part.
Last one, and we'll get out of here. Winning 14-6 end of the year gets our Illini where in the final Big Ten standings? Michigan State's 7-0, man. Like I think they're going to win 15 games. Like it's just the way they're playing, the consistency, the depth they have. So I think you probably got to get to 15 to have a chance at this. But 14-6 would put you in discussion for a pretty high seed in the NCAA tournament, put you in the top 4 of the Big Ten tournament. Because Michigan, like they blow some games, man. Purdue is good. I think they're going to be in that realm, but do they have enough talent compared to some of these other teams? I don't know, but Michigan State being 7-0, I mean that's a hell of a start. I know they got a tough finish, but do they lose more than 5 games? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think 14-6 is an outside chance of like some crazy share of the league title, which would probably be like 3, maybe even 4 teams. I think 4 teams could get there, but most likely probably tie for second. And depending on tiebreakers, you'd see where that seeds out in the Big Ten tournament. But yeah, I mean, that's probably like Illinois is probably a 3 or a 4 seed in like a Lunardi projection going into the Big Ten tournament. Of course, we reel off enough to maybe win that thing. Like Illinois last year, I was talking to somebody today, like I think Illinois last year only had 2 quad 1 wins going into March, and then reeled off a couple in the regular season schedule, and then got like 3 at the Big Ten tournament or whatever it was. So there could be some jockeying there based on how that plays itself out. But yeah, I think you need, if you're Illinois, what's the quick math on that? What is that? Is that 10-2 the rest of the way?
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. Tall task.
That's a 21 type of effort there. Michigan State and Purdue are right now projected to go 15-5. Purdue 7-1 now in the Big Ten. Michigan and Illinois projected to go 14-6. You know what all those teams have besides talent? Good coaching. For all those.
Yep.
Fox the River, he 1999 super chat. Request for Latuip's film room to break down the foul calls in this game so it can be sent to the Big Ten. RBC Bradley, if Underwood doesn't take this to the league, he's not taking care of his team. He needs to make a case about this officiating. Did he say anything about that, Derek? Because like Bielema was not afraid to be like, yep, I'm sending in these calls. Brad usually does that a little bit more behind the scenes.
I would imagine that he will. He did not say anything to us about that. He did make it known again that he thought it was a raw deal, and especially the 4th one. So is he going to send it in? I don't know. I felt like, and to Illinois' credit, it wasn't like just a formality in the final minute. I thought if it was where it was maybe like an 8-point game, that Brad would get himself rung up, rung out of here to make a statement. But he couldn't do it because of how tight the game still was. But I felt like that was in the cards if the game was decided at the very end. But again, Illinois pushed them to the brink.
All right, good stuff. Derek Piper, get home safely. And everybody check out, he had a great breakdown of the European prospects that Illinois checked out. We'll talk about that at some point here on the podcast as we move forward, but go check that out at IlliniInquirer.com. Derek Piper, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Talk to you soon.
All right, everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.